Good morning. You will all be muted so we can all hear our prelude this morning. My Lord, what a morning, arranged by H.T. Burley. Thank you, David. Welcome to worship at Paint Branch Unitarian Universalist Church. We acknowledge that the land on which our church stands is part of the ancestral grounds of the Piscataway people. I am John Barr, one of the worship associates who plans services in collaboration with church staff. I'm happy you chose to be with us today. If you are using Zoom, please run your cursor around the perimeter of your screen to find the microphone icon and be sure to remain muted throughout the service so we can all hear the speakers and performances clearly. While you do this, please find the option for switching between gallery view and speaker view. I believe you will wish to choose speaker view throughout this service. Clicking on the bubble icon in Zoom opens up the chat screen where you can read timely messages during the service from our Assistant Church Administrator, Bill Brown. Right now, I invite you to type into chat how many people are viewing from your screen, if you have not already done so. As an announcement, please join the Board of Trustees today from noon until 2 p.m. for our next quarterly town hall. You can hear updates and ask questions about the upcoming capital campaign, changes coming to religious education, follow-up to racial climate assessment, the developmental minister search, and more. The Board of Trustees will also be taking public comments from you this month with a special focus on when and how to resume in-person activities. We hope that you can join us. Simply return to this meeting in Zoom at noon. And as a reminder, all of our online services are recorded and are posted on our YouTube channel. You may go to the YouTube channel and search for Paint Branch Unitarian Universalist Church, although I'm told that there is a PBUUC, which is perhaps not the same thing. You may want to search for the whole word, the full words. And once you do find us, or just use the link that Phil is posting in the chat, because that'll definitely get you the right place. Do please subscribe. Turns out that if we get enough subscriptions, we get some more features on our YouTube channel, which is, I don't know, it was news to me. But we are pleased to begin our worship this morning. And I want to kick us off this morning with some words by Robert French Levins as we begin our service. Holy and beautiful, the custom which brings us together to face our ideals, to remember our loved ones in absence, to give thanks, to make confession, to offer forgiveness, to be enlightened, and to be strengthened. Through this quiet hour breathes the worship of ages, the cathedral music of history. Three unseen guests attend: faith, hope, and love. Let all our hearts prepare them a place. The topic of today's service was selected by Carol Carter Walker, who won that privilege during last year's church auction. The inspiration the t-shirt gave to the worship associates was so great that we felt we needed to allow ourselves more than one service to do the topic justice. We don't have a final schedule for the next part, but it is my pleasure to start the part one of our inspiration from a t-shirt by inviting Carol Carter Walker to light our chalice this morning.
I begin with this quote from Rosa Parks, about whom much has been written, but whose direct words we rarely hear. People always say that I didn't give up my seat because I was tired, but that isn't true. I was not tired physically. No, the only tired I was tired of giving in. We light the chalice to celebrate Unitarian Universalism. This is the church of the open mind, the helping hands, the loving heart, and the radiant spirit. Encendamos este cáliz para celebrar el universalismo unitarianismo. Esta es la iglesia de la mente abierta, de las manos amigos, del amor de corazón y del espíritu radiante.
Good morning, my good people, and happy Ostara on this, the first full day of spring. I'm Chris McCann, your religious educator, and it is a joy to be here with you. I would like to begin this morning by acknowledging the tragic shootings in Atlanta that claimed the lives of 8 people, 6 of them women of Asian descent. The names of the victims are Soon Chung Park, age 74, Hyun Jung Grant, age 51, Sooncha Kim, age 69, Yong Yu, age 63, Delana Ashley Yon, age 33, Paul Andre Michel, age 54, Zhouji Tan, age 49, Dai Yu Feng, age 44. Elcias Hernandez Ortiz, age 30, survived the shooting, and he is hospitalized in intensive care. These shootings take place during a time of an increase in anti-Asian violence in the United States, spurred by the previous occupant of the White House. The Asian Pacific Islander UU Caucus of diverse, revolutionary, Unitarian, Universalist, multicultural ministries have released a statement which ends, "We each have a role to play, and our active care makes a difference. May we live from the truth of the inherent worth of all people and our interconnectedness with each other. May we work towards our collective liberation. May we all be safe." You can find their entire statement as well as the statement from the Unitarian Universalist Association at uua.org. In the midst of this tragedy, we may yet find hope and inspiration. Today, we will learn about 4 inspiring African Americans from various places in American history, all facing the tragedies and triumphs of their times. Frederick Douglass, who spoke passionately about emancipation and suffrage. Rosa Parks, who challenged the nation to see Black people as people. Madam C.J. Walker, who built a business empire and became the first female millionaire in the US, and Maya Angelou, who wrote these profound words. Here, on the pulse of this new day, you may have the grace to look up and out, and into your sister's eyes, and into your brother's face, your country, and say simply, very simply, with hope, good morning.
A slogan on a t-shirt. Think about what that is for a moment. On the rack or in the product photo online, it's an invitation. On a person, it's a declaration of identity, of allegiance. A worn slogan forces anyone who looks at you to engage with the slogan as they engage with you. It also forces you to remember what you're wearing so you can respond to others as they respond to your public declaration. The slogan itself can be simple or a complex test of shared identity. A t-shirt with the message, "Go Terps," is simple, requiring only that the viewer realize that a Terp is a mascot, and thus the wearer of the shirt is presumably a supporter of Terp doings. Black Lives Matter on a shirt requires slightly more social awareness, but otherwise is still pretty simple, a declaration without a test. I find that a slogan with a hidden meaning or a test is more enjoyable to see on a t-shirt. An in-joke, a way to connect on a point of intimacy with strangers who are, by passing the test, not so strange. If I were to wear a shirt emblazoned with "hand shot first," or "Hello, my name is Inigo Montoya," that would create an immediate point of commonality with some of you. It would also exclude the rest of you, communicating that there was something that we did not share. I find I don't actually wear t-shirts with these sorts of slogans. I have them. I just don't wear them. The t-shirt before us today is a much more complex slogan. The list of names spans a range of knowledge and public awareness. The list is a puzzle and a guide. No modern American can fail to know who Obama is. I like to think that most of us will figure out who Martin and Rosa are pretty easily. And once your mind is on that track, the rest follow. If there is a name you aren't familiar with, you now have context. You are unlikely to be sitting at a computer, as I was, Googling names to make sure you actually know who you're talking about. But you might remember seeing the name and make the connection next time. Today, worship associates will be speaking about Frederick Douglass, Madam C.J. Walker, Maya Angelou, and Rosa Parks. So we can all have that much more of the puzzle. I will admit, I had never heard of Madam C.J. before Carol proposed this service. Some of the other names are little more than names to me. I was disappointed with myself when I realized that. I figured that as a UU, I have a responsibility to know about these people. So join me as we learn more about our prophets, their words, their lives, and why we should not only know and speak, but wear their names. But before we dive into today's prophets, we should lay down our personal cares. Pastoral Care Associate Lynn Lewison will lead us in joys and sorrows.
I look out and say, good morning. As we gather today, we carry life's hurts and its great joys. Sharing these in community can be very helpful. So I invite you to share your joys and sorrows in the chat this morning, and I will lead a meditation after the intonation. And now David will play Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child from John Carter's cantata. Thank you, David. Now, let us take a few minutes to acknowledge all that has been shared, as well as those joys and sorrows that remain unshared and yet are on our minds. In this quiet time, may our hearts open to hope and healing. May our minds open to hope and possibility. And now, may we hold these and one another in love and kindness, so that this congregation may be a source of strength and comfort, courage and hope in the days and weeks ahead.
Inspirations from a t-shirt.
As Lynn told us, the piece David just played for us is called "Sometimes I Feel Like a Motherless Child." Children being separated from their mothers, families being separated generally, was a common occurrence during the early life of Frederick Douglass, because enslaved human beings were regarded as commodities to be bought, sold, and inherited along with other property. Douglass addressed this indignity and many other cruelties in his writings and speeches as he argued for the deserved rights of Black people. In his first biography, he tells that before his mother died, when Douglass was 7 years old, he only got to see her during rare nighttime visits. Carol Carter Walker's t-shirt notes that Frederick Douglass was a great orator. His speeches and writings about white people disregarding the humanity and dignity of Black people are, unfortunately, still extremely relevant some 160 years later. Douglass's inspiring life story is one of profound determination and courage in the face of the dangers of slavery and racism. When he was 8, he worked as a house slave for a mistress whose attitude toward him was somewhat kind at first, as she began teaching him to read and write. When her behavior became cruel, the lessons stopped. But Douglass continued to learn in secret and then began teaching other slaves. After escaping, Douglass arrived in New Bedford, Massachusetts. He was 24 years old in the spring of 1841 when he attended an anti-slavery meeting at the Black Episcopal Methodist Zion Chapel, where he briefly described his experience of being enslaved. His oratorical ability was so impressive that he was invited to attend Nantucket Island's first anti-slavery convention later that summer. According to one of his later autobiographies, young Frederick Douglass was very intimidated by the request to speak. Nervous though he may have been, newspaper accounts at the time report that Douglass astonished the crowd with his intellectual power, wisdom, and wit. Then, in November, he was invited to lecture for the Massachusetts Society. His address was titled "The Church and Prejudice," and Douglass called out the hypocrisy of clergy and worshipers who, quote, say they like colored men as well as any other, but in their proper place. They assign us that place. They don't let us do it for ourselves, nor will they allow us a voice in the decision. They will not allow that we have a head to think, and a heart to feel, and a soul to aspire. They treat us not as men, but as dogs. They cry, "Stew boy," and expect us to run and do their bidding. That's the way we are liked. You degrade us and then ask why we are degraded. You shut our mouths and then ask why we don't speak. You close our colleges and seminaries against us and then ask why we don't know more. Thus began Frederick Douglass's life of speaking and writing about injustice, which included writing 3 autobiographies that documented different times of his life, as well as nonfiction. He published a weekly anti-slavery newspaper called The North Star, with a subscribership that grew to 4,000. This was followed by a newspaper called Frederick Douglass's Paper. He traveled throughout Britain on an anti-slavery lecture tour for 19 months. He was a best-selling author. He held public offices, including his position as District of Columbia's United States Marshal. In 1872, Douglass was nominated as Vice President of the United States for the Equal Rights Party. His first autobiography, a bestseller, was called Narrative of Frederick Douglass, a narrative of the life of Frederick Douglass, an American slave. It helped to grow the movement to abolish slavery and documented his goal-oriented personality. It became the most widely read first-person account of slavery. His second autobiography, My Bondage and My Freedom, elaborated on his first and focused on his adaptation from enslavement to freedom. Because his third autobiography, The Life and Times of Frederick Douglass, was written after the Civil War and emancipation of slaves, it included details of his escape, his interactions with Presidents Lincoln and Garfield, and his positions in public office. As an advocate for social reform, Douglass spoke on many issues, including freedom, education, voting, and employment empowerment for Black people, women's rights and suffrage, Indigenous people's rights, and the right of Chinese people to immigrate to the United States. Douglass held up a mirror to white society, powerfully articulating our hypocrisies. He was bold and brave, and his messages still resonate today. I think of his words in a piece called Fighting Rebels with Only One Hand. It was September of 1861, and Douglass was incensed that the government did not want to include Black men as soldiers in the Civil War. He said, "What on earth is the matter with the American government and people? Do they really covet the world's ridicule as well as their own social and political ruin? They are sorely pressed on every hand by a vast army of rebels, infuriated by the darkest inspirations of a deadly hate, bound to rule or ruin." Douglass called out government leaders for their lack of courage, saying, "What a spectacle of blind, unreasoning prejudice and pusillanimity is this?" His exclamation about the lack of courage of leaders brings to my mind current leaders who fail to condemn the former president for inciting the rebels at our nation's Capitol building on January 6th. Today, we see the results of deadly hate as officers hired to protect and serve, abuse, and murder Black people and other people of color. We see the state and national leaders are making moves to suppress the vote. Frederick Douglass's inspiring courage and determination to speak for justice provides an example for all of us. And now we will hear Ebony Contreras speak about the businesswoman known as Madam C.J. Walker.
Build like Madam C.J. Walker. How do we do that? Who is she? The Guinness Book of World Records records Madam C.J. Walker as the first female self-made millionaire. Not the first Black female, but the first female self-made millionaire, period. Netflix recently made an original biographical drama series about her on their network. There are other millionaires before her, but none 100% self-made as she was. Madam C.J. Walker broke barriers for women entrepreneurs by starting a successful hair care and cosmetics line. She was known for her activism and used her money and fame to support numerous organizations and causes. Her deeply philanthropic nature and activism is what make her particularly relevant for Unitarian Universalists. She embodies the UU charge of justice, equity, and compassion in human relations, a free and responsible search for truth and meaning, beloved community, and respect for the interdependent web of all existence. Some say her generous heart may have been influenced by her own impoverished upbringing and her experience as a recipient of charitable support when she was trying to raise her own daughter. Her donations provided financial support to educational institutions, a teacher training school, a retirement facility for elderly women, social services, and a YMCA, and many more. She supported Black artists and musicians. Additionally, she used her money to fund court cases and political lobbying for anti-lynching and other social issues. 200 years after launch, Madam C.J. Walker's hair products and cosmetics are still available. They can be purchased at Sephora and other stores. I can tell you more about who she is and why her mindset is something that as Unitarian Universalists, we can learn from. Instead, I will share some of her wisdom in her own words in the following reading, which is a compilation of some of her own famous quotes. And I quote, I'm going to do a lot of quoting, and I quote, "If I have accomplished anything in life, it is because I have been willing to work hard. I am a woman who came from the cotton fields of the South. From there, I was promoted to the wash tub. From there, I was promoted to the cook kitchen. From there, I promoted myself into the business of manufacturing hair goods and preparations. I have built my own factory on my own ground. I had to make my own living and my own opportunity. I am not merely satisfied in making money for myself, for I am endeavoring to provide employment for hundreds of women of my race. I want to say to every Negro woman present, don't sit down and wait for the opportunities to come. Get up and make them. It's pretty hard for the Lord to guide you if you haven't made up your mind which way to go. Perseverance is my motto. I got my start by giving myself a start. When we began to make $10 a day, my ex-husband thought that was enough, thought I ought to be satisfied. But I was convinced that my hair preparation would fill a long-felt want. And when we found it impossible to agree due to his narrowness of vision, I embarked on business for myself. I want the great masses of my people to take a greater pride in their personal appearance and to give their hair proper attention. People are ugly, not in their face, but in their thoughts. So never get impressed by someone's appearance. Rather, dig deep down into their thoughts to reveal the real person, inside out. I want you to understand that your first duty is to humanity. I want others to look at us and see that we care not just about ourselves, but about others. I have made it possible for many colored women to abandon the wash tub for more pleasant and profitable occupation. I am not ashamed of my past. I am not ashamed of my humble beginning. America doesn't respect anything but money. What our people need is a few millionaires. Now, I realize that in the so-called higher walks of life, many were prone to look down upon hairdressing, as they called us. They didn't have a high opinion of our calling, so I had to go down and dignify this work, so much that many of the best women of our race are now engaged in this line of business, and many of them are now in my employ. Open your own shop, secure prosperity and freedom. Keep in mind that you have something that the person standing before you really needs. Imagine yourself a missionary and convert them. There is no royal flower-strewn path to success, and if there is, I have not found it. Love's language is imprecise, fits more like mittens than gloves. I love to use a part of what I make to help others. End quotes. Amen. Now, David will play hymn number 301, Touch the Earth, Reach the Sky, verses 1, 4, and 5. He'll play it through once before we all sing it together. David?
Maya Angelou forged her brilliant life on her own terms. She can't be defined by a label such as poet or author. She performed on the stage, composed music, worked for justice with Malcolm X, lived and wrote in Africa, raised a son on her own, taught in universities, and yes, wrote prolifically poetry, essays, novels, screenplays, children's books, and even cookbooks. From an early age, she resolved to trust her inner voice. As a child, she was raped by a man who was soon after found dead. Believing that her speaking up had caused a death, the young Maya stopped talking for 5 years. She was able to speak, but she refused. That experience informed her first autobiography, I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings, published in 1969. Her use of fiction writing techniques such as dialogue and characterization defied the norms for autobiography. Metaphor and symbolism revealed broader themes of racism and sexism in this society. It became not one person's story, but a story of many. There would be 6 more autobiographies over the years, interspersed with collections of astonishing poetry. Her poems have been called the anthems of African Americans. We may remember the poem she read at Bill Clinton's inauguration, On the Pulse of Morning. The message was that the United States was a place where many disparate elements of our history can come together. Although our differences are great, we have more in common than not. But that optimism was hardly present in all her writing. There was also insidious, unfathomable pain at the racism and trauma that she had experienced and witnessed throughout her life. Her poem, Mask, for example, is a tribute to a maid who rides a city bus every day, smiling and laughing at every stop. It's a heartbreaking story of racist oppression. Maya Angelou's mother told her, when you get, give, when you learn, teach. And teach she did. She would later describe herself not as a writer who taught, but as a teacher who wrote. I was a lucky university sophomore when she visited my African American Studies class for a day. It was a year after I Know Why the Caged Bird Sings was published, and she was a rising literary star. She was 6 feet tall, dressed in full-length West African dress and head wrap. She walked slowly into that classroom, pausing to smile into the faces of the students as if each one were a crown jewel. She didn't speak, she bestowed inspiration, wisdom, courage, to listen deeply for one's own unique voice. There is no greater agony than bearing an untold story inside you, she once said. While each person's story is unique, it is human and therefore relatable. No one can make the perfect words flow like Maya, but we can learn from her teaching and reach inside ourselves to tell the truth of our own stories in our own voices. I am human. Nothing human can be alien to me, she said. That sounds a lot like our first UU principle, recognizing the worth and dignity of every human being.
Many people wonder where my secret lies. I'm not cute or built to suit a fashion model size. When I start to tell them, they think I'm telling lies. I say, it's in the reach of my arms, the span of my hips, the stride of my step, the curl of my lips. I'm a woman, phenomenally. I walk into a room just as cool as you please, and to a man the fellows stand or fall down on their knees. Then they swarm around me, a hive of honeybees. I say, it's the fire in my eyes, the flash of my teeth, the swing in my waist, the joy in my feet. I'm a woman, phenomenally. Men themselves have wondered what they see in me. They try so much, but they can't touch my inner mystery. When I try to show them, they say they still can't see. I say, it's in the arch of my back, the sun of my smile, the ride of my breasts, the grace of my style. I'm a woman, phenomenally. Now you understand just why my head's not bowed. I don't shout or jump about or have to talk real loud. When you see me passing, it ought to make you proud. I say, it's in the click of my heels, the bend of my hair, the palms of my hands, the need for my care. Because I'm a woman, phenomenally, phenomenal woman, all you women and me.
Rosa Parks made many public appearances, but most of us don't know her for her speeches. She worked many jobs, but never built a business empire or accumulated wealth. She has been honored in many ways, but not for her writings, as far as I could tell. We know her for her actions, for her dedication, for holding to her convictions despite the consequences. Rosa Parks is known for refusing to give up her seat to a white person on a bus in Montgomery, Alabama in 1955. The whites-only section of the racially segregated bus had filled up. The driver expanded the whites-only section further back to let more white riders have seats. Rosa Parks was told to get up, give her seat to a white person. She refused. She was arrested for her refusal. Her arrest and court cases led to legal action and a bus boycott that eventually led to those rules being declared unconstitutional. She wasn't the first Black woman to be arrested for this specific act of nonviolent protest, but it was in some ways her irreproachable, ordinary lifestyle that led civil rights leaders of the day to build a movement around her case. A married woman in her 40s, working as a seamstress, who simply would not yield another inch to segregation and racism. Now, Rosa Parks was involved in the civil rights movement and worked for the NAACP for years before this event. She'd been to the Highlander Folk School in Tennessee to further develop as an activist. And even though she and her husband lost their jobs and had to move after her famous ride on that bus, she continued to work towards civil rights for the rest of her life, donating most of the speaking fees from her many public engagements. I don't think ordinary is the right word to describe Rosa Parks, but I think it's an important word for this part of the service. The t-shirt that Carol gave us as a prompt for this service says, "Challenge like Rosa." So how did Rosa challenge? She challenged when and where she saw something she couldn't abide any longer. She challenged in the face of repercussions she knew could come. And she challenged with the quiet strength of her faith. And please note that Rosa Parks titled one of her books Quiet Strength, so that phrase is hers and not mine. The title of our service is Inspiration from a T-shirt. And I feel the inspiration most strongly today from Rosa Parks. I'm not an orator like Frederick Douglass. I needed extra coaching and some advice from David to even speak loudly enough, even with a mic, to be a worship associate. I don't have an entrepreneurial bone in my body, and I don't think I'd be capable of what Madam C.J. Walker achieved. I write often, but I'm not expecting an invitation to read my work at a presidential inauguration like Maya. I know that some of us in this congregation are authors and are entrepreneurs and are powerful speakers. But comparing ourselves to these names from the t-shirt can be pretty intimidating for some of us. Their accomplishments can seem out of reach to us ordinary folks. But can I challenge like Rosa? Can we? It's hard sometimes, but yes, we can. It wasn't so much Rosa Parks' particular skills as it was her extraordinary character that allowed her to do what she did that evening on the bus and afterwards. However we might rate our own talents, we can all aspire to do the right thing when we see an opportunity to do it. This is something we can and should look to do while living our ordinary lives. We can all try to do the hard things that rock the boat, that might make some people upset. And just as Rosa Parks cited her faith, I think all of us Unitarian Universalists are called upon to do this work by our second principle, justice, equity, and compassion in human relations. The eighth principle, working to build a diverse, beloved community by our actions that accountably dismantle racism and other oppressions in ourselves and our institutions. I know that I fail at this on a regular basis. Sometimes I quietly accept things that are against my UU principles, but we can all always strive to do better and be inspired by leaders like Rosa Parks.
Thank you all. As part of the ongoing stewardship campaign, we are pleased to present a reflection by Diana McFadden.
Thank you, John, and good morning, everybody. Happy spring, happy equinox. I have been working on my stewardship testimonial for 2 weeks, and I just could not find what I thought would be the best words. Paint Branch is impossible, really, to contain in words. I'll do my best. On September 27th, 2017, my job of nearly 15 years was eliminated. as several major tasks that made my position essential for most of those years were either outsourced or automated. Nothing personal. It's what corporations do from time to time to cut expenses for maximum efficiency. Besides all the obvious stress that can come with a job loss, what was most heartbreaking for me was having to make hard decisions about cutting contributions I had made to a number of noble organizations that represented my values and I believe our values. They include comprehensive civil rights for all, health care for all, reproductive rights, church and state separation, protection for the environment and our beloved planet, strengthening our public commons from national parks to public transit and motor-free transit for those who can choose that. Real communities with real centers that everybody, including youth, can walk safely to and from their friends, gather and enjoy and comfort and rejoice with one another. All that matters most in life, what we all share. Yesterday, I had to drive through an area of Waldorf of great sprawl, and I was just shocked. So much of it looked new. And I thought, when is humanity going to reach a point of recognizing the need to live gently? And this is what gives us the most joy. So I was unable to, I've decided rather than spread my contributions so thinly, the amounts were meaningless for each organization. I have realized it is best to reduce the number to maybe 3 or 4 at most, one of which would get more, would get by far the most. And how to determine which entity would receive the most was easy, actually, and that would be Paint Branch. Why Paint Branch? Paint Branch does amazing things for me and enables me to rise up in ways I've never thought I was capable of. I was recently invited to join this incredible, esteemed group called Worship Associates of people that I literally hold in awe and great respect. Me too, really? Me too? So I would say that Paint Branch has empowered me and shone a light in me, finding strength I did not know that I had, tapping on abilities that I perhaps knew I had, but had just abandoned or left dormant. I feel right now we're at an incredible moment. It's a scary moment. It is like a valley, a sort of shadowed valley. I'm recalling Ebony's ultimately inspiring call to support Paint Branch. And we are at a moment of great change, seeing some new truths, shedding an old skin yet again. And it is a moment for each of us to give as much as we possibly can, and beyond that, perhaps. I feel I'm relatively new as a 15-year member still to Paint Branch's long enduring history. And I guess that all I can say is imagine the world without Paint Branch. Imagine our life without Paint Branch. And then imagine Paint Branch and what Paint Branch is already and what it could become beyond this challenge ahead of us. And I believe and hope that we can get through this by marshaling our resources as stewards, contribute maybe above and beyond what we think we can to get us through this new change. We stand at a point on the edge of a new future ahead of us that we can make. I have less money now, but my plan is to give as much, more than I ever have before, to Paint Branch alone. This is the time when we need to do this, and I hope that we will all do this. And if we do, we will push through this and imagine what we can be in our future, and we will reach our new dreams and grow and thrive more together and be a beacon for more to join us in our great community, and that is Paint Branch. And I thank you very much for listening. Thank you.
Thank you, Diana. The mission of this church carries on, and so do our expenses. We are so very grateful to have the financial support of our members and friends. Please give as generously as you are able. The Breeze links are now in the chat. And as you consider what you can give, please enjoy the offertory music today. The Storm is Passing Over by Charles Albert Tindley, as arranged by Barbara Baker. I close with words from Duke T. Gray. The blessing of truth be upon us, the power of love direct us and sustain us, and may the peace of this community preserve our going out and our coming in from this time forth until we meet again. Please join in our response. Fuente de amor, Spirit of life.
I extinguish this chalice with another quotation from Rosa Parks. I have learned over the years that when one's mind is made up, this diminishes fear. Knowing what must be done does away with fear.